Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is, well, it should be a Ukraine news military aid update, but I'm actually going to start with talking about geopolitics because, as I'm sure all of you know, it's kind of breaking news at the moment that Donald Trump is speaking with Zelensky in Mar-a-Lago, and the press appear to be there where it's all kind of out in the open and therefore potentially quite performative. And yet, just before the meeting, Trump had a nice telephone call with his best mate, Vladimir Putin. This is not looking good for Ukraine. This is exactly what happened before their last meeting, which was supposed to be a case of giving tomahawks to Ukraine. And then he went and had a phone call with Putin, and Putin convinced him not to do that. And Donald Trump followed through with whatever diktat Putin established. And now we have this situation where Zelensky's met with Europeans yesterday, had a phone call with Keir Starmer today because he was unable to meet with Zelensky yesterday. So Keir Starmer's involved from a UK point of view. So thank you, for Keir, for the constant coordination. I started my morning, in Florida today with a detailed phone call with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. We discussed preparations for the meeting with President Trump, as well as our contacts with European partners. I informed him on the situation on the front line, the consequences of Russian strikes. We greatly value United Kingdom support, and we will stay in contact. And then he's been speaking with Europeans, so on and so forth. But then Donald Trump released this Truth Social just a few hours ago, which was, it's an absolute shocker. It really, really is. Trump said he just had a good and very productive phone call with Putin ahead of his meeting with Zelensky later today. Donald Trump says in his Truth Social post, "I just had a good and very productive phone call with President Putin of Russia prior to my meeting at 1 p.m. today with President Zelensky of Ukraine. The meeting will take place in my main dining room of Mar-a-Lago. Press is invited. Thank you for your attention to this matter." So we have this situation where the press get involved. He's invited the press to be a part of this, whereas he had a private conversation with Putin. Putin gets to dictate to Donald Trump what he wants, and then Trump goes and presents this to Zelensky and then makes some performance out of it. And Zelensky, of course, is going to say no, because let's face it, the Russians are not going to give up on their red lines. Kirill Dmitriev has already come out and said warmongers, in other words, Europeans and allies of Ukraine, are in full panic mode after the Putin-Trump call. So, yeah, trying to stir the pot there. Putin and Trump have agreed to create 2 working groups on the peace agreement. Their parameters will be specified in January. Putin's aide Ushakov has said the first working group will work on security issues and the second one will focus on economy. So this is, we're going to punt this to the long grass. We'll work on some peace initiatives in January, just later, and we'll put 2 working groups together and we'll do this and we'll do that. One will talk about this, one will talk about that. Meanwhile, Zelensky has gone and said, we are ready to do a ceasefire right now. We are ready to have elections if you can guarantee us security and safety, and we are ready to take this seriously. So Zelensky is very, very much approaching this differently to Putin and the Russians. So here, the first working group will work on security issues, the second on the economy. Ishkov said that the phone call was Trump's initiative and lasted 75 minutes. So Putin gets to talk to Trump for 75 minutes. Trump gets convinced. Otherwise, no doubt. This is a full list of the talking points from Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov after today's Trump-Putin phone call. And they are as follows. So, translation of the talking points. Putin held a telephone conversation with Trump. Here are the key points from Ushakov's statements. The Russian president agreed with Trump's proposal to continue work with the settlement. Work on the settlement within the framework of specially created working groups. The parameters of the working groups on Ukraine will be announced in early January. The American leader stated the need to end the war as quickly as possible. Putin and Trump hold broadly similar views on the temporary ceasefire will only prolong the conflict in Ukraine. So Zelensky says we'll do a ceasefire 60 days. Putin doesn't want that, right? He just wants to carry on the war. So remember that time before Alaska when Trump said, want a ceasefire, has to be a ceasefire. When it spoke to Putin in Alaska and came out saying, we don't need ceasefires are not important. We want to do a full-on peace negotiation. That's because Putin knows that a full-on peace negotiation will be a protracted engagement between all parties, which is why he's punting this to January and saying we'll get working groups on the economy and working groups on peace, blah, blah, blah. We won't do a ceasefire. Meanwhile, Zelensky said, look, you asked for a ceasefire way back when. We said, yes, let's do a ceasefire. Russia are the ones that didn't want it, and Russia are the ones that still don't want it. And yet Putin appears to have convinced Trump yet again that a ceasefire is a bad idea. Trump called Putin to discuss the Ukrainian settlement before meeting with Zelensky. The parties agreed to talk again by phone. Results of the meeting between the US president and Zelensky. It makes sense for Kiev to make a decision on Donbass without delay, taking into account the developing situation on the front lines. In other words, to translate that, well, they need to make a decision on Donbass quickly because otherwise we're going to take it like that. We are advancing all directions and we're doing an amazing job. Of course, that's the most fortified area of Ukraine at the moment, that area that they want Ukraine just to give away. And the Russians, some are claiming the Russians really are throwing everything at the Ukrainians at the moment and that they don't have too much left in the tank. It makes sense for Kiev to make that decision at what the Russians say straight away on Donbass. Trump admitted that the Ukrainian conflict was the most difficult for him. The US president listened carefully to Russian assessments of the prospects of reaching an agreement. Conversation with Putin was organized at Trump's initiative. To finally end hostilities, a responsible decision is required from Kiev. In a conversation with Trump, the Russian leader stated the importance of continuing to focus on the understandings reached in Anchorage. I mean, what were they? Trump spoke of impressive prospects for US economic cooperation with Russia if the conflict in Ukraine ends. And there you go. That's all this means to Trump. He couldn't give one shit about Ukraine. This is about impressive prospects for US economic cooperation with Russia. That's all he cares about. The parties exchanged New Year's greetings. Oh, that's lovely. And wished happiness to the peoples of the Russian Federation and the United States. How wonderful. That warms my cockles. That does. That's brilliant. I'm so emotionally touched. On a bridge near Trump's Mar-a-Lago, Ukrainian supporters gathered with Ukrainian flags and posters demanding a just, lasting peace, urging the president to do the right thing, as well as reminding the world amid Trump's threat to hand territory to terrorists. Of course, that will do absolutely nothing, sadly. But yeah, nice to see them there nonetheless. Putin's advisor Ushakov says a final halt to fighting requires a political decision from Ukraine regarding Donbass, making it clear Russia has no intention of backing down from its claim over the region. And that, my friends, is pretty much that. My prediction, therefore, is Ukraine will say, well, we can't do this. We need to change our constitution in order to do that. I need to ask the people if we want to do that. So all of this is a non-starter, and Trump will go, in that case, we're going to screw you over because I've just had a lovely conversation with Russia. We talked about economic benefits for both of us, and he wished me a very happy Christmas and a very prosperous new year. And I'm looking forward to a prosperous new year. So I'm sorry, Zelensky, screw you. I'm just going to stick with my mate Vlad. That's my read on the situation right now. So I expect nothing good now to come out from that conversation between Zelensky and Trump, and I really put that down to having a 75-minute phone call with Putin. So we have a claim here. We have the makings of a deal, says Donald Trump when speaking to reporters outside Mar-a-Lago. The US president believes Russia is serious about peace despite bombing the crap out of Kiev over Christmas. So yeah, it looks like Tim White is going to be giving us some more updates as to what's going on there. It's all ongoing now. I don't know whether they have therefore just finished having a chat. What I'll do is I will start with my military aid update proper now, and we'll get into discussions of that, and then we'll return to see if there have been any latest developments in the world of peace negotiations. So hopefully you are all okay with that. Thank you very much for being on board. Thank you very much to Putin Puppet, who says Krasnov called for Putin's orders or Epstein dirt. Well, you do wonder what happens on these phone calls and whether there are sort of loaded hints that maybe Trump would understand if Putin said something. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know how many people would be involved in these conversations, to be fair. But yeah, we'll see. Okay, so thank you to the pirates. Think we all knew this wasn't going to go Ukraine's way. Well, so you could argue that this is Ukraine. I mean, had there not been a conversation with Putin, this is Ukraine taking it to the US and saying, look how willing we are. I mean, for me, this is all about Zelensky stating that he is the one that's willing to compromise, that he is the one that's really actually genuinely wanting peace. And that if there are no red lines and no concessions from Putin, then that's Putin's fault, and that should be the one thing he wants to communicate. Now, if you look at Zelensky's face there, it doesn't look happy. I have to tell you, if this is after the conversation, and I don't know, I mean, that would be a very short meeting if this meeting has already finished. But he doesn't look particularly happy there. That is not a happy Zelensky. So I am not hopeful at all that this has gone according to plan or as was hoped from Zelensky. But again, if Trump has a phone call with Putin just before speaking to Zelensky, then it is just an excuse to do whatever Putin wants. So yeah, that's the way it is. And I'm sure it will continue to be. Right, let's start with funding first. Well, so I almost said this, Michael Gowdy. So a 75-minute phone call with Putin. Of course, Putin understands English, but he gets it translated so that he can have time to think. This is a very famous ploy that he has. So Putin understands the English, but demands a translator. So then they translate it into Russian. All that time he's thinking how I should speak next, and then speaks in Russian, and that gets translated into English. So actually a 75-minute phone call is probably going to be half an hour of actual discussion, or 45, I don't know, 40 minutes of discussion, who knows. Well, I would assume it's going to be half the time speaking, isn't it, really? So that is worth taking into consideration. And I have to say, yeah, Zelensky does look terrible there. Yeah, as Vigo says, absolutely. Who is the unrepentant and unrelenting aggressor, and who is defending their territory and sovereignty? The point there, though, is that Trump couldn't give a monkeys. Honestly, that doesn't matter to him. It absolutely doesn't matter. And this is why I am so enraged with Trump. This is why I find him one of the most despicable humans. It's absolutely insane that we've arrived at a place where the victim of genocide is expected to prove that they are willing to not be genocided. Just the victim blaming, I think, is absolutely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Right. Okay. So let's get back to where I was going to be starting. We're going to talk about funding first, go on to main aid, like material aid. We're going to go on to Ukraine, and then a little bit on Russia. So by Ukraine, I mean what they are building themselves. Canada is to provide $1.8 billion in economic aid to Ukraine. So this is as a result of Zelensky going to visit Mark Carney yesterday on the way to Trump. Canada will provide Ukraine with 2.5 billion Canadian dollars, 1.8 billion American dollars in economic aid to Ukraine, according to Mark Carney. So that is fantastic, good stuff there. I don't know what's underwriting that loan, whether there are frozen Russian assets involved in that, because Canada does have a fair few. Germany has made a record contribution to Ukraine's energy sector, transferring over 160 million euros to the Energy Support Fund, the largest tranche of assistance to date, to help restore and strengthen Ukraine's energy infrastructure. So Germany, as I keep saying, are really fundamentally incredibly supportive of Ukraine. The Merz government is doing a good job there. German aid to Ukraine adds a bit of funding, but into material here, with 250,000 euros in financial support from the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. The German-Ukrainian association Blau-Gelbes Kreuz EV has delivered 9 high-performance generators and over 200 water containers to the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. In addition, 2 modern firefighting engines were delivered to support 2 local fire brigades in the Bohynivska and Pischanska communities, which are responsible for the safety of over 20,000 Ukrainians. Pierre is telling me that Stephen Miller was at the table as well in these in these negotiations. If Stephen Miller was at the table in these negotiations, that is very, very bad news for Ukraine. Genius Trump on day 1404 of the full invasion, it'll either end or it will go on a long time. Well done, mate. The meeting between the US and Ukrainian presidents and their delegation gets underway in Florida. So maybe that is the precursor to the actual meeting. So the meeting now takes place. And this is what, okay, so this is bad news. So I think that's Pete Hegseth, Stephen Miller. Is that Dan Driscoll? You've got Secretary Marco Rubio. You've got Steve Witkoff, and you have Jared Kushner there. I'm not sure who this chap is here. Not sure, but this is not a good lineup. I mean, yeah. Stephen Miller's involved. He is an outright fascist and an America First isolationist, quasi-isolationist, quasi-imperialist, expansionist. But yeah, that is not cool, unfortunately. That sucks. Stephen Miller involved in that. Oh my goodness. Sorry. So anyway, I am rather all over the place, a bit ADHD brain today, possibly in terms of there's going to be lots going on as we do this live. So either this was a very bad time to do a live or actually a very good time to do a live. So anyway, back to funding. Sweden transfers $66.4 million to Ukraine's energy support fund, bringing Swedish contributions to 211 million. The fund has also received over $1.58 billion since April 2022 to restore power infrastructure damaged by the Russian attacks. December alone bought $268 million in new aid, and a lot of that coming from Germany. We also have Estonia committing 2 million euros to Ukraine's energy grid as Russia's latest massive strike hits power facilities across 13 oblasts. Every restored substation, every functioning generator means a warm home, on an operating hospital, and a functioning society. So there we go. Now moving on to, I just can't get my mind off the fact that Stephen Miller's at the table there. This is really bad news. Stephen Miller is such an evil human being that he has no place at a negotiating table at all with regard to the war in Ukraine. No place there. Okay, now on to material aid. I talked about this already previously. France will deploy its newest air defense system to Ukraine in 2026, the first operational deployment of the SAMP-T next generation. So this is supposedly one up from the Patriot PAC-3. That's kind of the implication. Kiev gets 8 systems, 48 launches in total under a decade-long bilateral defense agreement. But that is a decade. So how many will they get initially? Well, it looks like 1 in 2026. Will there be more than 1 in 2026? I don't know. I do not know. We are hearing from the French. This is Eric Beranger, the CEO of MBDA Group that makes these things. He believes that the Franco-Italian SAMP-T system is superior to the American Patriot. He also believes that the Europeans must have confidence in their rearmament efforts. According to him, Europe has everything it needs, quote, skills, human resources, industry, and even more money. Just think of the hundreds of billions of euros that leave Europe for the United States every year to finance the American economy. And this is true. It'd be interesting to see in terms of military procurement, how much European money goes to the United States and how much United States money goes to Europe. And I assume there's just a massive asymmetry there, that Europe is far more likely to be buying stuff from the US than the US is to be buying it from Europe. So yes, yeah, as Michael Lanning says, Stephen Miller is a worse person to be involved in the Ukrainian discussions. FFS, yeah, really. Right, so moving on from the SAMP-T system, let's now talk a little bit about Sky Sentinel. This is quite exciting, and the British are coming up. I quite often talk about the Brits because I'm quite sort of proud, I guess. Proud's probably the wrong word. I didn't have any merit in being born in the UK. I just had to be born here. But isn't it good that the UK is supporting Ukraine in quite a lot of tangible ways? They produced a lot of things bespoke for Ukraine and are working hard on some really meaningful weaponry. We hear that there are cheap cruise missiles coming on the way from UK, as well as they're working on a hypersonic aeroballistic missile, I think, as well. Now, Britain is buying Sky Sentinel AI-controlled counter-drone turrets for Ukraine. These Ukrainian systems, says James Fennell, use electronic warfare and a 12.7mm Browning H2 heavy machine gun and are extremely effective against subsonic drones like Shahed. 10 to 30 of these $150,000 turrets are needed to protect a city. So you could put 10 to 30 of these around a city like Kiev, and you've got AI automated turrets. Sky Sentinel uses foreign components, which suggests a UK-Ukrainian collaboration in design and manufacture. AI controlled. They do not require individual operators, but can be integrated with and operated as part of an IAMD system for remote command post. Now, remember, IMAD, air defense. I'll show you the image I often try and please let it be here. It's that nice green image. I'll see if I can find it. If anyone can find me the tweet with the IAMD. Where is it? Please be here. I can't. This is similar to it. It's not the one I was thinking of, but this is kind of the same thing. So what the system does is a kind of plug and play system that puts in all of your air defenses and radars into one system. And then you have all the radar coverage that can join up. So you have aerial radar as well. So there's AWACS planes. In fact, that's not quite what I was looking for. Yeah. Anyway, I'll find it. But you get AWACS planes and radars, and they're all looking for air threats. And then you locate one, and then you can decide from the central command place as to what you're going to use to shoot this thing down, and then you select that and whatever. It's just almost a centralized sort of way of defending all of your airspace. And this was a system that the Americans have developed, and the Ukraine received the very first system from the Americans before even the Americans. This is back when, in the Biden years, and it appears that they should, at least in principle, be able to link all of their air defenses up. So going back to what the Brits are developing here, the idea is this can be plugged into that and work as a remote command post that can be brought into action centrally. Billed as the world's first fully automated AI controlled air defense turret, it fills a gap to counter cheap $10 to $30 drones, where sophisticated longer range systems like Skysaber, Iris-T or NASAMS are overkill and can be optimized for use against more complex threats. So it has positioning accuracy, countering high-speed targets up to 250 meters a second, 150 meters per second axis rotation frequency, sniper accurate aim, 17 micro guardians positioning accuracy. I don't even know what that means. So systems like Sky Sentinel, Octopus interceptor drones alongside Sky Ranger and LMM, as well as, so those are the German provided Oricleon turrets on top of, say, the Leopard 1 chassis. Then you got Raven from the UK. More footage has just come out from Raven shooting down targets recently. Gravehawk, another, and Terrorhawk, these other British ones that have been developed. So those Raven, Gravehawk, and Terrorhawk, I don't know if all of them were developed during the war in Ukraine, but they are. I mean, honestly, this is the sort of stuff that I'm really happy that UK is doing. And Leonardo's Falcon Shield, I'm not sure, I don't know about that one, but that's obviously an Italian one, offer lower cost ways to provide inner layers for air, field, and critical infrastructure, IAMD, in the UK, and bots too. So, okay, so this is obviously a good development for UK too. Put them around our own air bases and whatnot, but here, superb that Ukraine can get hold of these, and hopefully they can provide another substantial layer of air defense. Now, Finland's Summer Defense PLC said it delivered the first batch of Zeus FPV drones to Ukraine's defense forces and plans to increase production volumes in 2026. After combat testing, Zeus FPV drone family includes multiple variants with conventional and fiber optic control, designed for ranges from short distance missions to long range strike roles. So great, even more even more drones for Ukraine. They desperately need, obviously, as many drones as possible. Now, on the Australian front, they have provided 49 Abrams. I don't know how many are operational already, but they have certainly been seen in Pokrovsk. 425th Regiment of Skelia broke into Pokrovsk on Abrams M1A1 tanks, which Australia transferred to Ukraine. I think they've already lost a few of these, by the way. But I haven't got the footage to hand of them. But yeah, I'm fairly sure that around the Pokrovsk area, some of these tanks have been lost. Tanks were modified and equipped with anti-drone protection, so they showed themselves very well, breaking through to the western part of the city. And moving on now to Caesar, self-propelled howitzers from the French and the Danish, actually. Ukraine's front line just received a fresh boost, a 6x6 Caesar, 155mm self-propelled howitzer, now fitted with an upgraded anti-drone protection. As you can see, pretty substantial cope cage on there. Spotted maneuvering across snowy terrain here. The additional protection highlights battlefield adaptation against loitering munitions and FPV drones, while the Caesar's mobility and rapid shoot and scoot capability continue to make it a valuable asset for Ukrainian artillery units operating under winter conditions. Good news there. Now, we go on to the Norwegians. Odin's Ravens, a Norwegian-funded project, builds a ground-based rescue force to save Ukrainian pilots in contested zones. Financed by Norway's Fritt Ukraine and executed by Ukraine's Come Back Alive, the 28 million hryvnia package equipped all air brigades. 14 Norwegian donors contributed. Now, I don't know the full detail of this, but it's a project that, some kind of rescue project for pilots, I presume, that are downed in contested areas here. And you've got quads and vehicles and evidently drones, electronic warfare, helicopter stuff. I don't know the details as mentioned, but that's really good news. Thank you to Norway for that kind of help. And Latvia's delivered 34 vehicles here and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. The Latvian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said the convoy included 21 4x4 vehicles, ambulances for casualty evacuation and transport from Latvia's parliament. Since the start of the war, Latvia has sent 3,402 vehicles to Ukraine. I wonder if they include ones that go from NATO. NATO often go from sort of Estonia and I presume other areas in that neck of the woods. Yeah. I've shown you this video previously. Polish aircraft. Now, Poland has got previous MiG-29s to Ukraine, but it seems very coincidental that you've got a Ukrainian pilot patting a Polish aircraft or a former Polish aircraft in the 114th Tactical Aviation Brigade just after there are announcements that Poland was indeed getting 6 to 8 MiG-29s to the Ukrainian Air Force. So really nice to see Ukrainians use those Polish planes. Now, just slightly, not quite left field, but I think this is super, super important. I've been seeing a lot of discussion about, well, the US really hate Europe now. We need to really be thinking about generating things ourselves and moving capabilities from the US back to Europe or whatever. Now, Airbus, which is a European aerospace giant, a bit like sort of Boeing, Airbus operates across many countries, including the UK, in Europe, and it's a big sort of European air and aerospace giant. It's preparing a tender worth over 50 million euros. What for? To move mission critical systems and data onto European or EU digitally sovereign European clouds to reduce the risks linked to the US Cloud Act. So now it's very evident that the US have there's a huge asymmetry. All the big tech giants are American generally or Chinese, and that leads the Europeans thinking, well, if we want to store stuff securely, what if the Americans have control of the hardware and the software? Then they're essentially going to have really control over our data. We need to bring that back to Europe, but there are no huge cloud services in Europe. So, you've got this idea of EU first, of that, there is going to be a need to really onshore services, IT services that otherwise are housed in the US. So that's something that I think is coming out of the Trump administration right from the beginning, when they started showing themselves to be an unreliable ally to Ukraine. The EU started thinking, right, okay, we need to make some changes here. Now, a contract has been signed. Germany and Sweden have begun mass production of the new improved Taurus missile, NEO or NEO. It cannot be jammed or shot down and would penetrate the deepest command bunkers in Moscow. Major boost for Europe's deep strike capability. So this again, we need to get missiles back on the agenda in Europe. They need to be European made without, ITAR free. So I would presume that this is going to be made with components that aren't coming from the United States. Otherwise, there is an inherent weakness there. Now, on top of that, we then hear today that Bundestag Vice President Omid Nuripur has challenged new Chancellor Merz to follow through on opposition era demands for Taurus missile transfers to Ukraine, warning that continued refusal will result in Ukrainian casualties. So he's in charge of the Green Party. I would therefore, well, if he's a vice president in the Bundestag, I'm not sure. Anyway, the Green Party in Germany is very different to you might expect. The Green Party, it's quite a mature party, and actually it's supportive of NATO, very, very supportive of Ukraine. It's one of the more Ukrainian supportive parties across the board, it seems. German Greens party press chancellor on long-range missiles after years of debate. So it could be that the Taurus are back on the agenda. Here we have Berliner Morgenpost saying that the Bundestag vice president has urged Merz to finally approve delivery of Taurus long-range cruise missiles to Ukraine. He warned that repeated refusals cost lives and that phone support for Zelensky is no longer enough. We can't just phone him up and say, well, with you to the end. We need to supply big things like, Taurus. That's really good news to hear that again. Now, I've talked to you about this previously, and interesting that my speculation seems to be on point here. I've said that Germany and potentially the UK as well are relying on defense spending, I think, to boost their economy. It's interesting that Britain's economy is apparently in slightly better shape than many people will tell you on Twitter. We've just heard from, I don't know, is it the World Bank that we will become the 5th largest economy by 2030? Is that correct? Overtaking Japan at this rate. So it's not all doom and gloom for the UK. But I was suspecting that Keir Starmer was helping out Ukraine and at the same time boosting defense expenditure to boost the economy in the UK. And then you've got Norway coming along and ordering a bunch of naval vessels, and I think some other naval vessels have been ordered too. And so it's looking quite good from a defense point of view. And Germany is tooling up. We've seen Poland do this for some time. But a lot of their money has gone to, say, South Korea and the US. I don't know how much has stayed inside Poland, but their economy is doing fairly well, has been for some time. I think Germany has seen defense expenditure as a way to boost their industry and therefore to overcome a struggling, flatlining economy. Anyway, that's you've heard me say that a whole bunch of times. Well, it seems to be that other people are saying this too. So Kirilo Shevchenko said, surprise lifeline for Germany's struggling manufacturing. Massive defense spending boom is turning factories into arms producers overnight, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, remember, one of the big Volkswagen factories has just closed down. And I'm wondering whether that will turn into a Rheinmetall factory. There was talk about Rheinmetall taking on a Volkswagen factory some time back. I don't know if they've already done that or whether that's an option for the one that's just closed down. Berlin plans to ramp up annual military outlays to 162 billion euros, $180 billion by 2029, nearly doubling current levels. October industrial data already shows big gains in defense-related sectors, offsetting slumps in autos and chemicals. After years of shrinkage from high energy costs and Chinese competition, rearmament is proving an unexpected economic savior. And that's exactly what I was saying could well be the case. So military spending going up and up and up, with projections to go hugely north going forward. Index of new manufacturing orders in Germany, 9.9% increase of domestic orders there, offsetting some foreign orders going down, and that's going to be a lot to do with car industry really struggling. I think the German car industry very much didn't come to terms with electric vehicles quickly enough, and that is, I think, coming back and biting them on the arse. Okay, so that's the end of that section. We're going to go on to the Ukrainian section in a minute. I'm just going to have a quick look back to see if there's any more news coming out from Ukraine, whilst also saying hello to you guys in the live chat. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Not anything further at the moment here on the meeting. Yeah, so that's going to be ongoing, isn't it? Yeah, what do we have here? According to our information, there was a preliminary agreement between the Ukrainian and American delegations on the timing of the cessation of the war along the current front line and demilitarization of part of Donbass in March 2026, and the elections are in May. However, these are only the agreed positions of Ukraine and the US. Russia continues to bend its line, and what Putin said to Trump today will be the subject of negotiations at Mar-a-Lago. So this might be prior to the chat, and that's interesting. Because it's very clear, I was speaking to you about this morning in the Hits and Losses video, that the Russians are not keen on, and saying that earlier as well, they're not keen on a ceasefire. Like, they don't care for a ceasefire. And so they will do everything they can not to bring about a ceasefire. And so, you know, what happens to them if the US and Ukraine agree and Russia don't? Is there any appetite from the US to, from Trump, to give any pressure to Putin to come to the table or have concessions himself? Right. Okay. Just going to do a couple of sort of super chats and whatnot from you guys. Thanks for being on board. Rob L says, I think Zelensky might have expected a Putin call. Well, yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that one. A pirate says Europe needs to grow some balls, big balls. It's back to the discussion we are always having, which is Europe and Ukraine need the US, and they still need the US, which is why they're there now. If Ukraine didn't need the US, Zelensky would not be at the White House. So it's evident that the US holds a lot of sway here in terms of the intelligence that they give to Ukraine still, in terms of logistics support, just general military support from SACEUR, from the NATO forces in Europe, with planning, military, attack planning and defenses. We hear that, yes, there's the US provides satellite targeting data, but it also supplies early ballistic missile warning. So with the issues that Ukraine has already with ballistic missiles hitting Ukraine many nights a week, if the US was to step away, then they would lose the ability, it appears, largely to acquire ballistic missiles as targets defensively. And that means ballistic missiles would just have free reign to hit wherever they want in Ukraine. So there is leverage that the US has. The US has this leverage, and it knows that neither Europe nor Ukraine can just go, screw you, Trump, we're going to do our own thing. They just can't do that. So I'd love to say, yeah, Europe needs to grow big balls. Yes and no. I think if Europe could, they would. You would if you could. You aren't, so you can't. Honestly, it does a lot of heavy lifting, that statement, in different contexts. But like, I am pretty sure if they could, Britain and the EU would go, screw you, Trump. You are always slagging us off. You're putting tariffs on us. You're costing us economically. But the problem is, if you go, screw you, Trump, and we're going to do this ourselves, then Trump goes, well, screw you guys. I'm going to be even more retributive. And it costs the problem is that he has big tech in his pocket, Trump. The White House has big tech in its pocket. And big tech is massively important in all of our lives. Whatever job you have, broadly speaking, well, okay, no. For many jobs, though, not okay. Someone's going to say, actually, I'm a potter and I just have a kiln and I make pots. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Maybe big tech's not so big for you, but then Etsy, and then. But anyway, you get the point. Is that the big tech is huge, but it's predominantly American or Chinese, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. The Europeans need to generate that infrastructure themselves, but that's a 10-year project which will cost $1 trillion, so it's thought. And Europe, the UK, we can't do that. But we'd love to tell Trump to go and sod off and grow big balls and say we can do this ourselves. We just can't. That's the leverage that Trump has, that America has over Europe, which was fine when we're all getting on swimmingly together. But as soon as someone like Trump comes into power and we're not getting on swimmingly, then it's like, oh dear, we've got an over-reliance on the United States. Oh dear, the US has all of our tech infrastructure. Bugger, what do we do now? It's difficult. And it's really, really frustrating. Pirate, thank you for gifting 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Absolutely love your support, mate. Really, really do. Please hit like, subscribe, and share. It's free. And do it particularly on Blue Sky because, as we all know, Elon Musk is a square brackets, insert expletive here, close square brackets. Pirate again, more to your Ida fund for when you meet up. You've reminded me I need to check on Discord. So Ida said she'd love to come over and have a beer. So thank you. Yes. And Stephen Bandal gifted 5 ATP Geopolitics membership. So thank you to all of you guys. Let's get back into looking at the Ukrainian activity concerning military, well, not military aid, but military manufacturing, and some really important stats to come out with initially here. Honestly, Scruffy, this is good old live chat. This is something I do think about quite a lot. So I wonder what the world will look like in 20 years, and I wonder whether actually this is gearing up to allow Europe, the EU, to be a lot more independent from the United States and a lot stronger economically. I guess the issue is I don't want to go into a massive economic analysis of the globe and growing middle classes and jobs in China and India, et cetera. But 20 years from now, says Scruffy Tails, who is from Scandinavia, the EU will be a beast that the US and China will have tremendous issues with. I would love to know what democratically 20 years from now the US would look like, what China will look like, whether that will be a different nation, but also what the EU will look like, because there's every chance that the Russian and American influence in right-wing populist circles in the EU will generate a Eurosceptic movement that will try and undo the EU without people realizing that if you undo the EU, you are just minnows to be picked off by the big guys. I mean, look at the UK at the moment. We're struggling. We're trying to get back into bed with the EU because we know that swimming on our own in these big oceans of global geopolitics, there are some big sharks around there. And I'll tell you what, the US, India, China, these are much bigger sharks potentially than the UK. And safety in numbers. That's how NATO works. NATO works like Europe, like the EU. It's like smaller NATO nations can contribute to NATO meaningfully, but also wouldn't be able to survive without NATO in defending themselves. That's from a defense security point of view. See the EU as a NATO of economics. Honestly, that I see the EU as the NATO of economics. And if we want to have a national economic security, then we need to be part of an alliance. And at the moment, we in 2016, we opted out one of the biggest the biggest trade bloc in the world, expecting that was going to be good for us. And it never was going to be good for us economically. I mean, it's just, I can't believe how many people were sold a fat old lie. It just really depresses me. Because any kind of sensible analysis will tell you otherwise. Right. Okay. Anyway, God, stop asking me questions. Jeff Test Pilot says, Jonathan, do you believe that if the United States was going to invade Canada or had invaded Canada, that you and Great Britain and Europe would come and fight on our side? My goodness, what a question. I honestly don't have a clue, because you've got one NATO nation attacking another NATO nation. I don't know that I can answer that. I just don't know what would happen. I would like to think Whether we'd send troops, I don't know. Would the US ever do that though? I think there would be congressional. I just think that's a moot question because it just wouldn't happen. I know there's a lot of talk, but I think you would get military leaders in the United States, in the armed forces, and you would get Congress, and you get the American people just going, "What are you doing? This is a step too far. We cannot invade our neighbors." Surely that would happen. Right. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Big news. Ukraine's national military production has reached critical scale. In 2025, Ukrainian armor achieved the following output. So this is one particular manufacturer. 300,000 155mm artillery shells. So in 1 year, 300,000 155mm shells is huge in Ukraine alone. Up to 100,000 105mm artillery shells. So probably for tanks or smaller howitzers. Up to 240,000 NATO standard mortar rounds, 81mm and 120mm. Now, I know they did have some problem. I don't know if it is this company, but there were some Ukrainian manufactured mortar bombs that had to be sent back because they had a really high percentage fail rate. But nonetheless, this is exactly what Ukraine needed to achieve. This is a major milestone, says Zenstrike, for Ukraine's defense industry, as large-scale domestic production of NATO standard ammunition significantly reduces dependence on Western supplies. And now we are hearing that Czechia is looking like it's going to pull back on the Czech ammunition initiative. Now, according to Ukrainian Defense Procurement Agency, 46% of weapons were ordered from domestic manufacturers in 2024, with the remainder imported. By 2025, the share of the domestic companies in orders had risen to 76%. Wow. So am I correct in saying by the end of 2025, so pretty much by now, 76% of orders are coming from domestic manufacturers inside Ukraine? That is big. Long-range drones hitting Russian refineries, airfields, and factories are among Ukraine's most cost-effective weapons. I've long been advocating for this. The engineers exist, the demand is endless, but drone makers are running at 50% capacity, not because of parts, but because of orders, which I therefore think we're back to claims that there isn't enough money, there aren't enough orders. What we're hearing, interceptor drones, we heard the other day, it's not that there aren't the orders, it's not that there isn't the money, but it's that there isn't the manufacturing capacity. They are unable to scale up at the moment for interceptor drones. But in other things like long-range drones, they've got the capacity, they've got the potential to build a whole load of stuff, but they're not getting the orders in. The reasons they're not getting the orders in, because the demand is endless, is like they'd love 1 million FP2 drones, but they just don't have the money. So in certain areas, it's the money that's lacking. In other areas, it's the manufacturing capacity that's lacking. And it just depends what the weapon is, I guess. That's my interpretation. Drone makers are running at 50% capacity, but not because of parts, because of orders. Ukraine's deep strike drones work. The procurement system doesn't. Quote, you can't just enter this market. Someone has to lobby for you. Now, this is then getting on to more controversial stuff. This is Euromaidan Press, by the way, and it is an article of theirs. Want to build long-range drones for Ukraine? First, you need the right friends. And this is sounding a bit like Soviet-era stuff. This is sounding a bit like the Russian challenges with regard to drone procurement in terms of FPV drones. But now we're talking about long-range drones. So we know that Firepoint is a company run by one of Zelensky's mateys, and they have been investigated, Firepoint, for corruption. But, they're also super important for producing an absolute ton of stuff. Quote, certain individuals who wear epaulets have their own businesses, one developer told Euromaidan Press. They sign contracts for their own units. 65% of drone startups have quit since 2022. Survivors compete through closed-door procurement, where connections often beat performance. One company gets 50% of deep strike contracts and is now under NABU investigation. Well, that's clearly Firepoint. For 3.5 years, Ukraine bought drones by company name, not performance. That changed in July 2025, but for FPV drones only. So been improvements in this, in the context of procurement. And that's happened since July in FPV drone procurement, but not in these long-range drones. Whether reforms spread to long-range systems will shape how fast Ukraine can scale its most effective weapon. Yeah, interesting and slightly, uncomfortable reading there. Now, N-Strike says Ukraine has confirmed that so talking about Firepoint, Flamingo cruise missiles could pose a serious challenge to US Tomahawk class cruise missiles, potentially outperforming traditional systems in contested environments by 2026. Right. Loads of caveats here. The other day, Zelensky came out and said in one attack of 5 Flamingos, only 1 hit the target, 4 others were shot down. Then you had Poroshenko, the previous president, coming out and saying that they aren't as good as you think. They're only good when you pair them up with Neptunes, long Neptunes. So there's a bit of a criticism for Flamingos as not being good enough, but they are a work in progress, I guess. And it's been an incredibly quick journey to get them to production. But then you've got Ukraine also saying that these could be a serious challenge to US Tomahawk class cruise missiles. Now, interesting, the other night, and there's some question about how many drones were sent, but the newspaper reports were saying that, cruise missiles, that the US launched on, was it Christmas Eve, against Nigeria, something like 15 Tomahawk cruise missiles. They say over a dozen. So people are guessing 15 Tomahawks, and 3 Tomahawk warheads were found unexploded, not having hit the target, which is actually a much higher fail rate than you would expect from one of the world's leading cruise missiles, right? So that was interesting. Also interesting that apparently, I mean, I've got this, I think, stacked up for a geopolitical video, but there's Malcolm Nance was absolutely raging about this, that they were going on really, really old intelligence. They've hit these villages in northwestern Nigeria that were kind of mixed Christian Muslim and had nothing to do with Islamic extremism. So the whole American strike appears to have been a complete failure. Nothing was hit, I believe, and it was all just performative. And actually, a bunch of the missiles didn't even explode. So I don't know what you make of all of that, but it seems like those American strikes on Nigeria were not good, really. But I probably need to confirm that. So Flamingo is being positioned as a next generation European analog to the Tomahawk, with capabilities designed to overcome advanced Russian defenses such as the S-500, while reshaping the EU's long-range strike architecture. I mean, if they can get a consistently decent engine put on these, I mean, part of the reason I guess they're quite cheap at the moment is that they're using old turbo fan engines or whatever they are from older planes, I think, that they only need like 5 hours worth of flying out of, so they don't need to be the best engines. So you need to get them from A to B. But I guess when they start making bespoke engines for these, then they're going to be more expensive, but hopefully then more reliable. That was one of the criticisms Poroshenko had, was they were using these old engines. But yeah, I showed you this video the other day. This is definitely, I said afterwards, I'm not sure about how good this is as a video. It looks a bit AI, and it is 100% AI. This, I mean, it is absolutely, like, they're not building this many pink missiles. And look at, there are loads of hints of why this is AI. I mean, one of them is when you've got the people moving about quickly because it's going in go fast, you've got these soldiers standing unmoving at the side there. So this guy hasn't moved for all the time this is happening. I think his head just turned 360 round there, like The Exorcist or something. So it is definitely AI, and lots of people looking at this going, yeah, besides the crane that appears out of nowhere, the messed up numbers, and oh yeah, it says it was made with Meta AI. So that would have been a brilliant video had it been true, because look at all those missiles being made in a big warehouse. But yeah, some of you pointed out at the time that it was indeed AI. AI slop is getting anywhere. I've just there's an error in analysis that's just been done on YouTube that something like 10% of videos are now AI. And a couple of you guys were saying in the chat the other day that, oh my goodness, I keep getting thrown in my algorithm, these AI channels, and they're just absolute garbage, you know. sorted out. So yeah, that's something to look out for. Right, Ukraine is developing a universal missile system based on the HIMARS principle. That is something else that I would like to see as well. So not only cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, but yes, they need to make their own HIMARS, or their own guided multiple launch rocket systems that can really be effective in that near rear area, up to sort of 100 and 150 kilometer range. That's what they need to be. Well, actually, obviously 300 kilometer range if they can fire ATACMS as well, or similar sort of tactical ballistic missiles, and that would be super useful too. But anyway, we are hearing that, yeah, Ukraine is developing a homegrown HIMARS type launcher. It's working on a domestically produced missile launcher modeled on the US HIMARS to strengthen long range precision strike capability. I don't know if it's long range, medium range, and cut dependence on foreign systems. The platform is designed to be flexible, able to launch different guided rockets and missiles, and reflects combat experience gained during the war. Ukrainian officials say it's part of a wider modernization of artillery and missile forces. The project highlights Kiev's push for defense self-sufficiency, ensuring sustained firepower and improved counter-battery and precision strike operations, even if external supplies fluctuate. Ukraine really is ramping up their own tech production and weaponry production. Now, speaking of their own production, here is the 2S-22 Bohdana with a new armored cabin. Now it's being made with the Tatra chassis from Germany in this case. This is then becoming a bit of a hybrid production, which helps out Germany. Germany going to be interested in supporting the funding. Germany paying for 200 Bohdanas to be built. And of course, Germany no doubt will be saying, we'll pay for 200 Bohdanas if you can build them on a German chassis. And then, of course, you get your weapons and we get to sell a bunch of chassis. So yeah, Ukraine has fielded an updated 2S-22 Bohdana 155mm L52 self-propelled howitzer with a new armored cabin on a Tatra Force 8x8 chassis. The system is now in service with the 50th Separate Artillery Brigade, featuring additional slat and mesh armor for improved crew protection. As you can see here, I wonder, that looks like quite a few crew to operate this. I mean, the advantage of, say, the Archer, which is a very expensive piece of kit the Swedes provide, I think the Archer can operate on minimum 2. But I mean, that's dead impressive. And the RCH 155, which is the German-British choice going forward, which they're getting to Ukraine, that's a crew of 2, which is then eventually, I mean, they're kind of future-proofing it. It's called RCH because it's remote-controlled howitzer, and eventually it can be operated autonomously. I think for every 9 RCH 155, there's a command vehicle, and I presume that would help. That would be controlling those 9 RCH 155s. Anyway, on to ground drones, UGVs. A small, low-profile Ukrainian UGV called Bambatel can deliver payloads of up to 20 kilograms. Fiber optic cable control gives jamming-free stable communications up to 20 kilometers with an HD camera. Radio backup control is available, but would require a repeater drone. So there you go. A wee little thing there that's able to carry quite a bit of a weight. There are so many of these UGVs now coming online. If we go to the next tab, we have a different one here, the Serco UGV, a little Ukrainian one with a conveyor belt system for dropping PTMU-shaped charge anti-tank landmines. So not your TM62 round ones, but these ones that you'll see in a second. The arming key for the magnetic influence ionic fuse is tethered to the drone and automatically pulled as the mine is placed, initiating a 60-second arming delay. So it drops it, and then some kind of trigger as it's pulled. It's connected somehow to the main frame, and then as it's dropped, it then pulls the trigger, and then you have a 60-second delay, and the mine is then active. So this machine can get out of dodge, I presume, because the mine might be magnetically triggered. I don't know. But there you go. So that is another cool little Ukrainian UGV. Here we have Ukrainian fragmentation anti-personnel warheads for FPV drones. The electric contact wire will be straightened before flight, and the arming key will be tethered to the ground to be pulled out at launch. So there you go. My goodness, I wouldn't like to fall into that on a drunken night in, and then that's the end of me. Oh no, all contacts have been made and I've blown everything up. Wow, that just ripped through you, all that fragmentation stuff. Just yikes. Not nice, not nice at all. This is a video. In this video, 100 down Shaheds and Gerbers are taken out by the P1 Sun drone. The speed is 300 kilometers an hour for this drone, and the possibility of acceleration to 408 kilometers an hour. So it should be able to just take out some of these jet-powered Shaheds as well. The flight altitude from low echelons is up to 5,000 meters. Prices from about $300 to $500 per unit, so a damn sight cheaper than the things it's blowing up, and that is good news. So 100 of these taken out in this video alone. This is why the P1 Sun is one of the main operators against these Shaheds. You got the Sting, and you got the General Cherishnya is one of the other ones. So they're doing a really good job with these interceptors. Ukraine will jointly produce the Linzer drone with Germany. Under the Build with Ukraine initiative, Frontline Robotics and Quantum Systems are scaling production of Linzer bomber drones capable of carrying up to 2 kilograms over 10 kilometers, used for strikes, mining, and tactical reconnaissance. Those mines, of course, are going to be quite small mines, like the ones you just saw being laid. TM62 ones are about between 9 and 10 kilograms, so it'll be well beyond the capability of this particular drone. Right, let's now look briefly at the two Russian bits of info I have. Russia met its 2025 recruitment target, as I said the other morning, of 403,000 by early December. So they were ahead of their recruitment target, which is a real shame and challenge for the Ukrainians, if this can be believed, of course, and will exceed it by year's end. That is Kirill Bohdanas stating that, the head of military intelligence to Suspilna. Russia's 2026 target is a tad higher at 409,000, using increased one-time payments to attract recruits. And then we also hear, as I've been warning you about so many times, Russia continues systematically recruiting foreign fighters for war. Ukraine says Russia is continuing to do that, according to Ole Ivashchenko, head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service. So military intelligence saying they've hit their recruitment numbers, foreign intelligence saying they are recruiting, systematically recruiting foreigners. And then we've had that Indian guy that gave himself up and said that they're, said how he got to fight on the front lines. And you've had, a lot of talk about Indians particularly, which is a worry, given that there are claims that somewhere between 70,000 and 100,000 Indians are coming over to work in Russia, which means that, well, if they've done it before with the odd Indian here and there, imagine what they can do with 70,000 to 100,000. So that is definitely something to be concerned about. Okay, right. That is pretty much all I have with regard to military aid. That's a bit of a smorgasbord for you. Moving screen here, I just want to give you guys some props for your kind generosity. Johnny Nedregard, thank you for your support from Norway. Really appreciate that. Putin Puppet here says, so EU countries with ballistic missiles can hit Russia. Sounds a bit strange, as France always was independent, so the tech must be in Europe. Well, I don't know what that's with regard to, but I'm pretty sure that any new missile going forward that's built in Europe they're going to be wanting it to be ITAR free. They're going to want them to be European weapons and not American weapons, or weapons with American components. I presume there'll be something put in place that even if the components come from the EU, an EU member state cannot say it can't be used. I'm fairly sure they'd have to put stipulations in like that. So a bit like the US saying, well, you can't use these Storm Shadows to strike inside Russia because they have, well, actually with the Storm Shadows, I think it's more to do with the targeting. Although they gave permission, the Grinkovich, the NATO general in Europe, for the American NATO general, seems to be someone who has his head screwed on the right way. So he's taking it upon himself to make those kind of decisions on behalf of the United States, which is fantastic, because if you left it to Trump and Stephen Miller and wingnuts back in the White House, you probably wouldn't get storm shadows being fired at oil refineries. But at the moment we are, and that's really good news. But anyway, I think going forward, European missiles will surely have a range of components from all over Europe, but I'm fairly sure each European nation wouldn't have the ability to veto the usage of those weapons by other European utilizers of the weapons. But yeah, I mean, I think this war has told Europe and the US as well, it has to be said, and anyone looking on, that actually cruise missiles and ballistic missiles are really important, and you need to make sure you're having cheap and scaled production of these things, because if you go to war, you're going to be needing to use these more than anything. Like I said to you right at the beginning of the war, and like I have advocated for ever since, Ukraine prevails in this war by doing everything at a distance, because they don't have the personnel, and they never did. So you're going to fight, you've got to fight with drones, and that's what they're doing. They're replacing humans on the front lines with UGVs, with automated turrets and whatnot, and FPVs that go around doors and go into dugouts and blow people up, so that people don't have to. So FPV drones and drones in general are replacing troops on the front line, and then you want to hit people with, near ear missiles, rockets, and drones, FP2 drones and similar. And then you want to be looking further at long range drones and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. That's how you go to war at the moment and not lose people. So if Europe wants to go to war ever, if it needs to go to war ever, it needs to make sure it's got massive production of all of those munitions. Putin Puppet then says, in addition to that previous Canada defending question, what about invading Greenland and Denmark, a war with the US and Russia on two fronts? Again, I don't even want to think about this. Goodness me, if the US, I think it's more likely that they would do something militaristic on Greenland than they would in Canada. And if they did that, I mean, that is going to war with a European nation. Literally, if they militarily kind of, scare quotes, invaded Greenland, what they'll probably do is just put more and more troops on the bases that they already have there, and just kind of expand and maybe by osmosis sort of try and take control. I don't know. I don't really know, but it's just insanely controversial. And it would just be Russia and China's dream. Rick from the Netherlands, hey mate. The US does not have the Arctic capability to attack Greenland or northern Canada. Their most capable units are stationed in Alaska. Canada and Europe outnumber and outclass the US in these conditions. It's a really interesting point, especially with Canada as well thrown into the mix there. And it'd be interesting that if they did make moves on Greenland, what would Canada do? So sort of reversing that question there. But my goodness, those are the sort of things I think about when I go to bed, because that's how cool I am. Just very, by the way. Somebody's saying Jeffrey Sachs not a fan, but the assessment of Trump's aluminium tariff on Canada backfiring is actually quite well reasoned. I don't know about this, but Jeffrey Sachs is an economist, and I've heard him say some really sound economic stuff before. It's just his Russia appeasement nonsense is getting worse and worse, absolutely worse and worse. He is not someone to be questioned. Sorry, not someone to be relied upon. He's definitely someone to be questioned. Right. Okay. Good on you, mate. I will be with Greenland, and I'm Canadian. Good on you, mate. So I'm just going to put you over to the side a little bit there and come back here. I just want to, before I love and leave you, I am going to see if anything else has happened with regard to the meeting. Just it's ongoing, isn't it? So here we have Trump Zelensky talks at Mar-a-Lago include top US officials: Marco Rubio, yes; Pete Hegseth, yes; Dan Kane. It's Dan Kane, that one next to, right? Okay, it's not Dan Driscoll, it's Dan Kane. Dan Kane is pretty decent. So this guy here, that is Dan Kane. Yeah, he is the chief of staff, isn't he? Not chief of staff, joint chiefs of staff. Dan Kane, he is pretty pro-Ukraine. He's, I think, a more typical military guy. So it's good to have him there. Steve Witkoff, yuck. Jared Kushner, yuck. Pete Hegseth. Think about Pete Hegseth. He's actually, when you listen to Pete Hegseth before he was appointed, when he was on Fox News, he was really strong in support of Ukraine and anti-Russia. He was like, he needs to go further and harder, and he becomes Trump's number one guy because he loves the way he looked on Fox News. Doesn't listen to what he said, but loves the way he looked. And he's talking about woke this and woke that and Christian nationalism. Yeah, he's my guy. So then Pete Hegseth just basically has to do a 180 switcheroo and just says whatever Trump wants him to say. So he is, so the, if you look at these people, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are just in it for the money and for appeasing. Well, Steve Witkoff is all about appeasing Putin and Russia, and he loves himself some poots, but also is a real estate guy, wants to make money. Jared Kushner just follows around trying to make money out of everyone. Look at what he's doing with Serbia, Saudi Arabia, so on and so forth. Then you've got, I presume is there someone else between Rubio and Witkoff? It might be. Is it a woman? I don't know. But there's someone there, possibly. Don't know who it is. I wonder if it's Susie Wiles. You've got Marco Rubio there, who is, in fact, I can probably get this to shift a little bit. Yeah, can't see. It's someone, yeah, she doesn't, probably is Susie Wiles. Got the same color hair and length of hair. So I think that probably is Susie Wiles, but it might not be. You've got, it would be weird for her to be involved in this. I wouldn't have thought that would be her. I mean, it's bad news if it is, because she's supposed to be quite, okay with Russia. You got Marco Rubio, would otherwise be one of the most sensible people on the American side of the table, but he's soulless now and he's died inside too many times. Pete Hegseth, I mean, if he's not pissed, then he's just going to be wanting to do whatever he thinks Trump wants. So remember, Trump said he thought Trump wanted him to ban weapons for Ukraine. So he banned weapons for Ukraine as not at all what Trump wanted, and they had to reverse that. That was Hegseth doing something because he thought Trump wanted it. Then you got Dan Kane, who's sort of okay. I don't know who this extra is at the back there. Then you've got like Mr. Fascist Nosferatu himself, and whoever this person is at the end. I mean, I won't call him a wingnut. It might be absolutely fine. You've got on Ukraine side Rustem Umarov, Andriy Hnatov, Serhiy Kyslytsya, and other senior officials. Kyslytsya is good. He's now involved in the foreign ministry. He was the guy who used to make all these amazing speeches in the UN. He was a Ukrainian ambassador to the UN, this guy, and I'm pretty sure that's him, and would say, yeah, he was often just absolutely railing against the Russians there. So anyway, that's who is there. We have, oh my goodness, what's going on? Oh dear, looks like there's internal fighting between Donald Tusk and Karol Nawrocki, the Prime Minister and the President of Poland here. My goodness, what's going on? So I presume it starts up here. So Donald Tusk says President Nawrocki has once again identified the West as a main threat to Poland. This is the essence of the dispute between the anti-European bloc, Nawrocki, Brown, Menson, and PIS, Law and Justice Party, and our coalition, a deadly serious dispute, a dispute about our values, security, and sovereignty, East or West. See, this is what America wants, this is what the Trump administration wants, and this is what Russia wants. This is what Putin wants. They want the Eurosceptics to be at loggerheads with the Eurocentrists. Karol Nawrocki says, Mr. Prime Minister, it's hard to believe we graduated from the same department, history. Are you blaming Boleslaw the Brave for fighting in the East and the West, and the Greater Poland Uprising insurgents for fighting for Poland against the Germans, which is also the West? The essence of the dispute is probably that the Prime Minister is incapable of listening with understanding, or is deliberately seeking conflict because he's not bothered by the budget, healthcare, etc. Oh, I already talked about the threat from the East when the Prime Minister was walking on the pier and hugging Russia as it is. And I still speak about it, but not on the occasion of the Greater Poland Uprising. That's not the topic. Have a good Sunday. It's really hard to believe, said Tusk, sweet dreams. So, wow, a bit of a public spat over the direction of travel for Poland there. who knows who is in the right? I'll have to think about that. But yeah, nothing. We're not hearing anything else about the US. But I have to say that Zelensky didn't look particularly happy before he went into that meeting. I have no deadlines, Zelensky said. Or is that Trump? No, Trump said there was no deadline for reaching a peace deal and added that he believed both Russian and Ukrainian leaders want an agreement. He also claimed that Ukraine would see great economic benefits after a potential deal is made. But calling Putin before that, it sucks big time. A military airfield near Kustyevskaya in Russia's Krasnodar Krai is reportedly under attack right now. Good. Let's hope it gets absolutely banjaxed. Right. Okay, that is enough for me. I'm going to go and finish watching Down Cemetery Road. I boycotted, I didn't sanction. Well, is it sanctioned? No. I boycotted Paramount. I used to be signed up to Paramount, and because of all the shenanigans with CBS and Barry Weiss, I cancelled my Paramount. And I was like, well, I'll just have a look and see what's on Apple TV. And Apple TV's got loads of great stuff. And what you want to do is just sign up to one of these streaming services, watch everything they've got, because I don't think Apple TV's got that much depth. They've got a load of really good things. Watch them over a couple of months and then cancel that, but not go back to Paramount, at least not until those Ellison bods become a bit more sensible. But anyway, just watching Down Cemetery Road with Emma Thompson and Ruth Wilson. Really good on the last episode. Really, really have enjoyed it. It's a great little show. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you very much to all the people who have been so supportive of the channel and who are all so freaking wonderful. Little Whiskey Shop, Mark, JP, my thoughts on today's meeting. USA will try to bully Zelensky to accept capitulation. Zelensky will push back. Trump tantrums and Russia kicks the can down. Well, Russia are definitely going to want to kick it down the road. I think Russia will get what they want no matter what. It's about what the US does, and does it take it out on. So the Ukrainians are going to have to be. Everything about that meeting is probably going to have to be how they play Trump. Treat him with kid gloves. All they want is Trump to come out that meeting not hating Ukraine, right? And this is why this meeting's quite a bit of a risk. But it probably wouldn't have been a risk had Putin not had a phone call with Trump. But then you've got Stephen Miller on the table as well. And I'd just be very careful about how I dealt with Stephen Miller. But like, either you ignore him. I don't know how much he would try and chip in. Bearing in mind, it's not really his wheelhouse. It should be like Dan Kane and Marco Rubio. But Stephen Miller, I was listening to another analysis last night. You know, I often talk about the two like Heritage Foundation people that run the White House. So Stephen Miller runs the White House, but so does a guy called Russ Vought. And he's one of the Heritage Foundation bigwigs and one of the authors of the Project 2025 book or 900-page document. And someone else was saying, who was it? Was it Carrie Swisher and Tim Miller were talking, and they were saying, no, it wasn't. It was someone else. It was others. Anyway, Russ Vought, they were just talking about how it might be then. Russ Vought is responsible for so much going on in the White House. So if you don't know who Russ Vought is, go and look him up. He is, honestly, he is super, super important. And he is, I'm going to just bring him up here, just do a little bit of a Google. So this is Russ Vought. He is essentially, like, him and Stephen Miller run the White House. You know, I've not spelt that correct. So there we go. That should be a little bit better. So if I go, you know, who is, hopefully AI can help out with a summary. Yeah. So Russ Vought is an American government official and conservative political analyst, currently serving in the director of the Office of Management and Budget, but he's got his fingers in loads and loads of pies. Influence and policies. He's known for strong he's the guy, right? Why you want to be very scared about this guy is that when Susie Wiles had her 22 hours of conversations with Chris Whipple from He's a Freelancer, but he was going to write a book, or he is writing a book. He's written previously a book on chiefs of staff for the White House. So he's interviewed all the chiefs of staff going back to like Nixon or whatever. And he approached Susie Wiles and said, can I interview you on the record? I'll be recording it all. and I'm going to write this into a future book. And she's like, yeah, it sounds cool. And then it appears that halfway through this process, he then said, oh, Vanity Fair, want me to turn some of this into an article. Are you okay with that? And she said, yeah, I'm fine with that. So it's like, okay. And of course, Vanity Fair are going to want the most explosive parts of this. So then he had 22 hours worth of recorded conversations on record that were really natural conversations, not just sit down, I'm going to interview you face to face. But there were sometimes, I said this to you before, sometimes where she was like folding her washing and he's at a house and they're just chatting. And so possibly she lets things slip, or she knows what she's saying. She knows all of this will eventually come out in a book somewhere down the line. But it turns out that Vanity Fair, and then he got the go-ahead for this article in Vanity Fair, and they pick out loads of really explosive quotes. One of the significant ones that she said is that Russ Vought is a right-wing zealot, right? I think that was her term. Right-wing conservative zealot or something like that. So her opinion as the guy behind, Trump's success is that he is a zealot at the heart of the White House, doing things like Stephen Miller. I'd say both of them are probably peas from a pod here. So he's he's played a pivotal role in shaping the Trump administration's budgetary policies. He has been described as a key architect of efforts to reduce the size of the federal government, freeze government programs, implement significant budget cuts. His influence has been so pronounced that some have referred to him as a shadow president due to his behind-the-scenes role in the government restructuring. There you go. That's exactly what I was just saying. In addition to his work at the OMB, Vought founded the think tank Center for Renewing America and has been involved in initiatives like Project 2025, which aims to advance conservative policies. So on and so forth. Long-standing commitment to fiscal conservatism and I think social conservatism as well. So anyway, Russ Vought and where was I going? So Russ Vought and Stephen Miller, these are big players, and you're trying to do peace deals with Trump, and you think, right, I've got to treat Donald Trump with kid gloves, make sure we come out of this, and he doesn't hate us, that he doesn't want to blame Ukraine for everything. That's the job of the Ukrainians now that phone call's been had, and now you've got all these people lined up. It's like, make sure Stephen Miller doesn't get to command what goes on in this exchange. Make sure that Dan Kane gets to say as much as possible because he's a sensible military guy, and make sure Marco Rubio gets to say as much as possible. And it's all about managing these people, not just putting your points across and trying to get agreement. It's almost just like we want to psychologically manage Donald Trump, this volatile individual, and Stephen Miller, who's just a bubbling inferno, a volcano of vitriol waiting to erupt at any conceivable moment. We need to be managing these people, and that's the job. It's like a psychological project, really, that meeting. So yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you, Mark, there with your thoughts. Yeah, I mean, either Trump either doesn't tantrum and the meeting goes okay, but he's going to be unwilling to blame Russia because Russia won't agree to it, or the meeting doesn't go well and he goes against Ukraine. But either way, Russia aren't put under pressure. I don't think Trump ever has the appetite to put Russia under pressure. Rick from the Netherlands says Trump called with Putin before the meeting and he will report back to his master when the meeting is over. Trump should put up or shut up and let the grown-ups talk. Yeah, the problem is, I think that should happen, but that's never going to happen. He will insert himself in the middle of everything. And there's not a lot you can do about that, because if you tell him to do one, he'll just become retributive and punish you for that. If you don't let him into the room, he will punish everyone. And the problem is he has the might of the American economy to punish European nations, UK, Canada, so on and so forth. Trump only cares about his deals. Absolutely in agreement there. Thank you, Rob Cook, super sticker. Thank you, mate. Really appreciate that. And it's great to have you on the back channel chats as well, Rob. So thank you for your input there. Okay, well, look, thank you very, very much for your viewership today. And I don't know if I won't be doing another video tonight, that's for sure. But he says that, but I'll probably go and have a glass of wine now at 12 o'clock when my missus has gone to bed. I'll be like, and anyway, this thing about Trump, because that's how cool I am again. Where's JD Vance? JD Vance, I wonder, well, hopefully there's a conflict, there's a scheduling conflict, or they recognize that he's just a bit too much for these meetings. So my guess is that there is a bit of tension between Marco Rubio and JD Vance. And so this is a good place to end up the conversation. So the question is, where does the American government go from here? So assuming that the Constitution is not going to be completely run roughshod over, that Trump won't be able to serve a third term, you've got essentially JD Vance or somebody else. And somebody else is going to be Ron DeSantis or probably Marco Rubio. And JD Vance will be vying for the position of president. He said, I've been vice president, I'm the guy. But loads of genuine Republicans will be like, we hate you, JD Vance, or you are just not charismatic. You are not nearly charismatic enough to be president of the United States. But Peter Thiel and big tech oligarchs and the tech authoritarians, technical term, those tech authoritarians will want JD Vance in because they're his guy. Peter Thiel paid for JD Vance's senator. They basically got him to become a senator and then lobbied for him to become the vice president through Donald Trump Jr. and others. And then Donald Trump Sr. then said, all right, I don't really want him, but yeah, okay, he's my number two. And then he got off to a really bad start because he was saying all these gaffes when he was going out on a campaign trail. And then he just about brought it back when he had the VP's debate with Tim Walz, and it ended up being quite a nice affair. Neither of them went to town on each other. You're like, oh, that's okay. And then everyone's like, oh, maybe JD Vance is okay. No, he's a complete dick. But he's not electable. He does not have the charisma that Trump does. If JD Vance ran against anyone like a brick, like Kamala Harris would get Hillary Clinton back, you could have the first female president by running against JD Vance, is my bet. So Marco Rubio is I don't think, I'm speculating, but I imagine there's some tension between the two because they probably both want to be running for president next. You had that comment from the Susie Wiles interview again, where, no, not from the interview, from the photo shoot, where the photographer for Vanity Fair said that JD Vance said, I'll give you $100 if you make me look good next to anyone else, and I'll give you $1,000 if it's Marco Rubio, if it's Marco. And although that's a joke, I presume it was said with Marco there and hearing, they're all in the room together. Like I'm guessing that these two probably don't get on like a house on fire. So if you've got Marco Rubio there, you probably, and he's going to be one of the main players, you're probably not going to have JD Vance out. I know there's a very long answer to that, but hopefully that makes sense. There you go. As Jeff Test Pilot says, JD Vance does not have the charisma to win the Republican nomination. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Marco Rubio was just spotted doing cocaine movements with his face during a State Department news conference. That, if you haven't seen that, that is a must watch. Absolutely weird. Like, honestly, I mean, that sounds like a bit of his facial movements were very, very druggy. Rubio cocaine face. I'm just going to put that into Twitter, see what we come up with. Okay, so here we go. You don't have the sound for this, but just look at his face. I'm already rubbing his nose. Okay, well, in fact, I think I will play. Let's actually play this to you because this is well worth looking at. So we've got, there we go. I'm going to put myself back in it. Why not? Right. So this is Marco Rubio talking just recently.
Yes, sir.
Rubbing his nose
today.
I thought you were introducing yourself.
No.
I'm Vladimir
Definitely
Putin.
not. Definitely not. Vladimir
What
Putin.
are you doing here?
Nick Schifrin, PBS NewsHour. Vladimir Putin had his own end-of-year press conference today.
Oh, he's trying to step on my message.
Yeah. His went, I think, 4 hours, so we got at least 3 hours. and he said he was willing to end the war in
I bet you he
Ukraine.
didn't do it in Spanish.
He did not.
All right.
Notice how he's interrupting all the time. He's not letting him finish a sentence. He's being jokey. He's very upbeat. He's doing lots of this that he does more. He's rubbed his nose at the beginning.
Go ahead.
Gave a wink there.
No, that's right. He said he was willing to end the war in Ukraine based on principles he had outlined last summer, and that included a complete Ukrainian withdrawal from 4 regions, most of which are not occupied by Russia, recognition of occupied Russian territory in Ukraine, and the complete lifting of sanctions. That goes beyond some of the recent conversations you've been having. So do you think Putin is serious about peace, and is the U.S. willing to recognize occupied Russian territory in Ukraine?
Look, I think ultimately there's
And then it goes on, and then he makes more of these really weird facial things where he's like doing that, and loads of people like online were like, "Oh my goodness, it looks like Marco Rubio's just taken some cocaine, and this is kind of like what it looks like," and etc. 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 So all you need to do is put Rubio Coke face in on Twitter, and you'll get loads of commentary on that. Anyway, I just thought that was, thanks for reminding me of that, because I was wondering whether I should include something like that in my geopolitics updates, and I decided not to, but I think it's worth, if you don't know about that, it's worth having a look into it. And yes, so anyway, I keep trying to go. This is one of my long oh my goodness, Vance with Kirk as First Lady. Eric, I've got a section laid up now for Erica Kirk, which is like, I feel a bit uncomfortable talking about Erica Kirk because she's a grieving widow, but is she? And then there's a whole meme. Internet lore has just exploded with Erica Kirk memes about her being absolutely totally made up now that her husband's dead, and she's doing all these crazy things, and you've got fireworks going off all over the shop. And anyway, it's created up. If you just want to go on Twitter and put in Erica Kirk, you will see meme after meme after meme of like, this is what a grieving looks like or whatever. And then some of them are pretty damn funny. Okay, right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your support. Big love to you all. Thank you to Hoagie, who is a great supporter of the channel, gifting 10 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thanks to all the members. Thanks to people on Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal. I need to get to my PayPal thanks. I haven't done that in ages, and I feel really bad about that. You are all absolutely amazing. Take care, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Toodle pips.